Hey, and welcome to the highlights of episode number 267 with Elliott Bisnow. Some of my favorite parts of this episode were when he spoke about how to build authentic relationships with high-level people. I also loved it when he shared how to organize impactful and life-changing events and why you don't need to have a big idea to be an entrepreneur. He is so knowledgeable, yet so humble. You guys are going to love this episode. There is so much wisdom and inspiration that you get in the full conversation. So to listen to the full podcast and get all the info in the show notes, head on over to melissaambrosini.com/267 right now. Elliot, welcome to the show. I'm so pumped for this conversation and for you to share your story. So from such a young age, you have done, created, and achieved so much. And some people would say you have created and achieved the impossible. So can you take us back and tell us how you got to where you are today? And did you always have this dream big attitude?
The main problem for me growing up was that I always wanted to do and create, but I just got put in a structure with school where I had to sit and I had to listen. And I think that led to me and millions of people around the world underachieving. So as soon as I got to college and I had more freedom to create outside of classes, that's when my entrepreneurial drive came to life. So for me, it started and I was in my college dorm room. My parents didn't give me any money. And I was eating the dorm room food that I didn't like. And I remember, going to Chipotle and, not getting toppings because it was too much money. And I saw a person across the hall, a couple floors down from me, screen printing t-shirts. And I asked them what they were doing. And they said they had their own small business where they made funny t-shirts. And it blew my mind. I asked them, who do you work for? Like, who hired you to do that? And whose screen printing press does that belong to? And the entrepreneur explained to me he saved his money for the screen printing press. And then he built his own website. He learned how to code and he just sold these funny t-shirts online. He was the RA, the resident advisor who kind of looks after the dorms, who is a few years older than me. So being the RA, that covered his cost of living. And then he made $1,000 a month that he could use for his college tuition. And that really was, it wasn't a light bulb media moment in that second, but it was like I went back to my dorm room and it was like that night, the next day, the day after, what? You can create your own business? It blew my mind. From that moment on, a spark was lit and I was 18 years old and I was go, go, go. And I went back to that person. I said, can I be your partner on this t-shirt business? Let's try to come up with another business. And that was it.
And were your parents entrepreneurs or no?
Not at all. I didn't know anyone who was an entrepreneur when I grew up. I didn't even know the word entrepreneur. The most successful people where I went to school were lawyers or doctors. And it was totally out of the realm of possibilities that I could start my own business. And it was actually a big problem hearing about successful business people because it was so far out of the realm of possibilities. What good was it to hear about the founder of Apple? I couldn't equate that to how they started Apple. So it didn't even fathom to me that someone could start their own business or nonprofit or start your own band or become an artist on your own. I really thought until that moment, my freshman year of college, that I would need to leave college and go find someone who I would work for.
What was your first entrepreneurial journey? And then can you take us on your entrepreneurial journey and how you got to where you are today?
Well, the first thing that happened was we tried to do the t-shirt company, but like anyone with their first startup, you just make tons of mistakes. And, ultimately that t-shirt company didn't really go anywhere, but we had another big idea. And our big idea was to create a consulting firm for all the stores and shops in our college town where we would get the college students to be the consultants and the stores would hire us. So my friend and I put together the business plan and the concept and we went out pitching and trying to, get stores to hire us, but that did not work and it took an entire year. And so on the surface, it was a colossal failure because my sophomore year had come and gone. We'd made no money. I'd spent the rest of my what was already meager savings, and we had nothing to show for it. But the truth, in hindsight, was that I'd now spent a year and a half with this entrepreneur, first on the t-shirt company, then on this new startup, working nonstop in a creative way that had never even been a possibility to me before. And every one of my mistakes and all my failures and all the sales pitches and all the stores I walked into were all new skills that I was learning on overdrive. Important observation is too many people think to be an entrepreneur, they need to have the big idea. And that's not true at all. And in this case, I didn't have the idea. There's way more ideas out in the open than ideas that you can have in your head. And if you know what your skills are, maybe you're a salesperson, maybe you're a computer programmer, maybe you're a designer, maybe you love HR. Every business needs these skills. And every single great company has its startup phase. And that startup phase isn't for 1 or 2 months. That startup phase is for a couple years. And so again, the big takeaway is, do something local and jump into something that someone else has started. Ask them to be a part of their founding team. They can make you a founding partner or a co-founder retroactively. You don't have to have the idea and you don't have to be there on day one.
Love that. Love it. So how did the Summit series come about? Where does that then fit into your story?
So when I left college, the problem was I didn't know anybody. I had no contacts, no friends, no mentors in the business world. I didn't know any entrepreneurs. And the way that Summit started is I cold called people that I read about in, Inc. magazine or Entrepreneur magazine. And I said, hey, I'm an entrepreneur and I would love to get together a group of 20 other entrepreneurs so we can collaborate together and have a new peer group and trade, big ideas. I called people just at my level and I built my own scene and my own crew. And if you look at all of our heroes, they came up with their own scene, with their own crew. They weren't mentored by other really famous people. And so when I left school, my concept was just, I want to meet other entrepreneurs. So I cold called them. And it's one of the biggest recommendations I make to people is find other people in your town, in your community, in your region, in your city, and reach out to them. If they're your level and they're just like you, they will love to hear from you. And those people over the last decade ended up becoming very famous and well known. Not all of them, but some of them. Blake from Tom's Shoes, the founder, was on the first Summit trip. I'd cold called him and he only had 2 employees and they had just done their first giveaway of 10,000 shoes. And the founders of Vimeo and College Humor, they were on the first trip. They had just started that company and they just answered the phone.
Wow. So how did you get their numbers in the first place?
Again, they weren't very high level at the time. They were entrepreneurs and they were company founders, but they might have 10 employees or 40 employees. You could just call their office and I would say, hi, this is Elliott Bisnow. I'm looking for X, Y, and Z. And sometimes they would just put me through. And other times they say, what are you calling about? I say, I'm also a local entrepreneur. This is, my business. And I'm actually doing a ski trip for 20 really game-changing entrepreneurs in 6 months. And I was calling to invite X, Y, and Z to the trip. I thought they'd really, really like it. And sometimes they put me through. Other times they said, oh, that's nice. Can you send them an email? And I'd send them an email. So there was a little bit of, pushing, but it wasn't like a year-long campaign to break down the doors of, Barack Obama.
Yeah, right. And so I would love to hear what are some of the biggest learnings you would give and pass on to early entrepreneurs?
Having co-founders is incredible for so many reasons. Going at something alone is really hard. It can be really depressing. Every startup is going to have hard moments. And when you don't have anyone to turn to and you don't have anyone to stand shoulder to shoulder with, you may not even make it through the hard times. And if you do, you're going to be battered and beaten. You're not going to have someone to, collectively rise out of the mud with you. And so I love having co-founders. And on top of that, there's no better feeling than building a team. That is my favorite part of all the years is all the incredible people who I got to work with. We got to create our own culture. The reward is right there. And on the back of a great team and shoulder to shoulder with a great team, you can then fulfill your mission and your vision of whatever it is that you want to launch.
You have a knack for creating life-changing, transformational, surreal experiences, which you've done very well with your Summit series. So what are some of the key things that you need to consider to make it impactful and life-changing?
Well, the first thing is that anything you do, especially events, it needs to be different. That's just a foundation of an event. There is no point to do a music festival that's the same as all the others with a small tweak. You really want to come at any event concept you have and be asking yourself, why am I doing this? And how's it going to be different? And that kind of a concept. Now you've just taken, oh, I want to do a dinner for 15 people. And instead of an expensive dinner at a restaurant where you can't control the tables and the music's too loud and everyone goes to restaurants all the time, now it's a dinner that people talk about for years and years and years. It doesn't cost any money. You use your friend's apartment, but you get really creative with that. And I think it's the same concept for, any type of event is how's it going to be different? People are amazing and the people here are outstanding. So what can we do that's different? Let's really, have more interesting food options. Let's put them at, more interesting venues, not in, below ground conference hall pits. Let's have music on, during the part where people are, meeting everyone else. Let's keep the panels a lot shorter. Let's have really interesting moderators. There's so many ways you can turn any type of event on its head.
I love that. And it makes it so exciting. My husband and I, well, my third book and the first book that we've ever written together is out September 2020. And right now we're thinking, okay, we want to do a book tour. And we're like, we want this to be like nothing else that we've ever experienced before or anyone's experienced. So you really do have to think outside the box and then do something that lights you up. It's got to bring you joy. Otherwise, you won't want to do it.
Well, there's no soul in a PR firm telling someone, all right, let's pick the 5 biggest cities and do a book tour. And, everyone can feel the inauthenticity of that and the monotony of that. And it's at these places. So you really have to step back and say, if I was going to attend a book tour, what would be amazing? The most important thing is being different and doing something unique and doing something in your truth. And so for us, when we ask, what do we want to do? It has to be things that we want to be a part of. No one's going to yank my collar and drag me to do something boring. We're always going to check ourselves. Okay, how can this book event be incredible? Because the reality is it can be awesome.
So awesome. I want to know for someone who's maybe more in the startup stages and they're just beginning their entrepreneurial journey and maybe they don't have a lot of capital to invest in huge events, like what would be your advice to them?
I think you can do events for free. So we have this saying, high, cool, and low cost. We always think about that. What's the highest value of cool and the lowest cost? So the opposite of that would be paying the most famous imaginable band so much money. And there's a good value, maybe a very good value, but the cost is off the charts. So what would be high, cool, and low cost? Coming up with 3 or 4 incredible artists who aren't well known, but they're the future in your mind and they're what's next. You don't have to pay them almost anything. And maybe some of them will do it for free because they're looking for exposure. And so and then to label yourself as someone who's thinking forward, thinking in the future. I don't think it's that neat to book somebody who's already famous. You want to be bleeding edge, just like technology. And then maybe even down the road in a few years, everyone will think, wow, I remember I saw that person at that event before they were well known, and they'll think of even more in the years later as a trendsetter.
For someone who is starting out, maybe to reach out to these bigger names, how would you approach it? Like, do you send an email? Like, what is the best way to approach those bigger, more higher profile people?
So before you go to anyone high profile, you have to build the foundation and you have to build momentum. So if no one knows my name and I write a cold email or a cold call to someone well known, it will never work. It's less than 1 in 1,000. There's no point, even if it was 1 in 100. You don't want that. And so you need to build the foundation. And the foundation is built in a handful of pieces. So the first is you need to create the event that's unique. That's the product. So you have to create the event that's unique. You have to set the date. You have to set the environment, and it has to really feel special. And the key for events, you have to own a niche. The next thing is you need to build momentum. Before you go for someone famous, you have to start building the lineup of the event. Every event has a lineup. And, at a festival, that'll be your musicians. At a business conference, that'll be your speakers. At a yoga event, that could be your yoga teachers, right? So you have a lineup. For Summit, our events are multidisciplinary. So it's music, speakers, art, but you'll have your lineup and you need to start building that lineup, and you need to thoughtfully build the lineup. You need to build the lineup ground up. You need to start with people kind of at your level. And as you build the lineup, you build momentum. And so when it's time to go to that big fish, we can say, let us tell you about what we have planned. On this date, at the end of May, we've chartered this cruise ship. And we're going to have this many people coming. And here's 25 of the other speakers that are going to be there. And here's the types of attendees that are going. And here's the link to the website. And so you have to build this momentum. And the final part is the best way to get someone high profile is to get an introduction, because you will almost never be able to send them a cold email or reach out.
Love that so much. How do you personally nurture your relationships and really invest into them?
Well, what I don't do is put everyone into a bucket or into an email list and just treat them as all, one big group. I mean, relationships, customers, clients. I mean, you want to be doing something where you love them. And if it's not love, you deeply care about them. You understand the humanity in each person, in each person who buys your product, in each person who listens to your podcast, and each person who comes to our event. These are human beings with families, with their own journeys, with their own stories. And I think the first thing is most people just skip over that. They think, well, I've got 4,000 people in my database. What's the best way to stay in touch? It's like, well, back up. I mean, the first thing is these are each of them human beings, and they're each different, and they each have their own unique life story. And, when you start there, you can start to break people up in relationships into different groups. And maybe there are some people that there's a way to keep them up to date through emails or sharing through social. But there's other people that, you want to keep up, you want to stay connected with. If it's your really closest 25 people, you really want to go over the top. I mean, it's remembering their birthdays. It's, helping people out, when they need your help. It's when they have something bad happen, you're there for them. So when I'm answering your question, how do I nurture relationships? I'm not necessarily thinking about, clients, or I'm thinking about in general. I really try to care about people.
I want to know, have you always had this big, dream big, I can do anything attitude?
Definitely not. I think the biggest thing that I've embraced over the last 5 or 7 years is being different, because just growing up, being different was the worst thing that you could do. It was all about conforming in my school and being part of a system and being like everyone else. And any way you're different, you would get picked out, or we didn't want to go about like that. And I think my realization that being different is the best thing possible. There's nothing better than being different. Your event should be different. Your company should be different, and you should be different. And that's what makes us special. And you should be different in your own quirky, unique way. And that's how people remember you. That's why people like you. And because the truth is, we're all unique, different people. Anything besides being different is inauthentic.
Now, everyone's definition of success is different. It's unique and it's special to them. But I want to know, what do you attribute your success to?
Well, I'm way less attached to business success than most people that I've met. I mean, I find the notion of business success just to be a part of my life. I mean, for me, having integrity, having values, having a well-rounded life, having days where I wake up and I'm really happy and I love the people that I'm around, that to me is the definition of success. So I would say I really love listening and having self-awareness. So when it comes to success, I've set my own definitions of success. I've set business goals, and I have, what I think would be a successful, like I have a vision for a successful marriage and a happy family, and setting the time I spend with my, 11-month-old son. And then I try to be really aware of, because all of us are imperfect. That's the nature of being a person. And I try to be really aware, and I try to really listen to people around me who can tell me, where I can show up more, and where I can, be a better friend or partner or dad.